32 years after his ragtag army ousted the Tito Okello military junta and the NRM took the helm, President Museveni yesterday gave his State of the Nation address as provided for under Article 1011 of the Constitution. Unlike in 1986, when he made a triumphant entry, there was barely any euphoria as the president had to give a detailed account as provided at the time the country is grappling with an economy in a tailspin and crime which has dented the credibility of the security and intelligence apparatus. Did the president offer pragmatism to a plethora of the country's problems, or did he fulfill a ritual full of empty rhetoric? On the spot tonight is a panel of four, including Andrew Karamagi, a lawyer with Action Aid, and Dr. Moses Kisa, a political science donor at the North Carolina State University in the United States, Felix Okoto Gong, Dokolo South MP, and Ginger West Member of Parliament, Moses Baliaku. Gentlemen, thank you for honoring our invitation. You are on the spot tonight. Let me begin with you, Dr. Moses Kisa, because today there was a debate at Makerere University on the shrinking political space in Uganda's democracy. How does this affect the state of affairs in our country?
Thank you, Ndugu Patrick, for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be on the spot and at NTV. I should like to say hello to all the viewers out there, and also to say hello to my fellow panelists on the show. Yes, we were at Makerere today, and we tried to interrogate the state of affairs in the country as regards to democratic space. Is it shrinking? Is it declining? Or what is going on in the country? I happen to have been the keynote speaker at the symposium, and I made the proposition that democratic space in Uganda has been shrinking since 2005. I used 2005 as the cutoff period, or the turning point, or the watershed year when we took a turn for the wrong direction. Why? Because 2005 was the time when the 1995 constitutional consensus got ripped apart. The Constitution was amended under very controversial circumstances to extend the tenure of the current President, General Museveni. The removal of presidential term limits in 2005, in my view, marked a key turning point that has contributed towards the emergence of what I consider a police state, where the contests for power have taken on a polarizing tenor. You have the opposition and other forces on the one hand that are trying to resist the status quo. On the other hand, you have the ruling party, the state, has created a state of affairs in the country that is not healthy. If you remember, Patrick, in 2016, on the eve, during and after the elections, there was tension, uncertainty, and a state of apprehension in the country, and especially in the city Kampala. Heavy deployment of the security forces and the police meant that we are a country which, in essence, is at war with itself. That has not changed. Last year, we saw a controversial, if dubious, attempt to once again, rip apart the 1995 Constitution by removing presidential age limit, which was done with the involvement of chaotic scenes on the floor of Parliament. That kind of stuff does not happen in a system and in a country where the basic rules of democratic governance are embraced and adhered to by all the actors. So, in essence, and in sum, what we were discussing at Makerere points towards the country backsliding as regards to the basic tenets and foundations of a free, democratic, and constitutionally governed society.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kisa. Honorable Kotogong, did the president yesterday address the question of the shrinking democratic space, or he didn't have to?
Now, I think the president was fulfilling his constitutional mandate to deliver State of the Nation address to the nation. It is basically an accountability event that should be carried by the president. Remember last year, it is an annual event that the president comes, makes a statement to the nation on the status of the economy, status of the nation. And last year it made pronouncements, promises, plans, and that is now, it should come this year, 2018, to make accountability. I promised this last year. Over the year, this is what we have achieved. This were the challenges. Then you project in the new year, financial year, that we are now going to begin. That this year, this is my plan, this is our projection, this is how we are going to handle it. Indeed, this year the president delivered it in a different style. First of all, he was lively, he was very stable, he was very calm, he was fatherly, and he relied too much on the Bible. He was referring all the time to the Bible. I think he's also now knowing that God is the omnipotent God. That God is beyond him. You cannot do anything without God. And that's why all the time...
Are you suggesting there was a time when he thought God maybe otherwise?
No, you know, leaders may think, after me, there is only God. So you think you are beyond God, you are beyond death. And actually was behaving like a father that after me, other people will also come. So don't think bad about me, because when I go, you will also go. So I think it was delivered in a very calm manner, and I liked it so much.
Okay, Andrew, what did the president leave out? Let's say now, he spoke and we heard him. In your view, what did he leave out that you should have heard?
In the primer that you aired before we started the show, you made mention of the fact that this is 32 years after capturing power. And while it might sound like a figure, maybe it might be helpful to point out that for me, sitting here on this panel today, it's helpful to note that I wasn't here. I wasn't born when General Yoweri Museveni captured power.
When you stepped in Kampala?
Yes, I wasn't born. Yeah. I was in P2, primary 2, when the Constitution, the 95 Constitution, was promulgated, primary 2. I was in secondary 4 when the political space was purportedly opened for contestation. Today, on this show, I'm a working adult. I pay taxes, and I'm debating the State of the Nation address of a man who captured power when I wasn't born. That should say something, I think. But you asked a question about what I thought that he left out. Maybe the starting point should be to say that it was evidently lacking in imagination. It was based on flawed logic. It was a narration of events as opposed to an account. Yeah. It was dishonest in a number of ways and contradictory. You say one thing and a policy proposal that you've made a few weeks ago contradicts that very, or your parliament has passed a law which goes against the very proposition that you're making, whether it's in the economy or healthcare or education. Finally, overall, I could say it was disappointing. And I think that as citizens, as taxpayers, we deserve better in terms of accountability for the taxes that we pay, both compulsorily and some voluntarily, depending on what we do. We deserve better than polemics and flawed observations. It's uninspiring. It sounded like a tired record.
Yeah. Honorable Moses Balieku, when I listened to the president speak. For me, it didn't sound like he was giving a State of the Nation address, an account of the last 1 year. And for me, it sounded like giving us the history, 32-year history of Uganda, because 90% of what he said is what I could have heard 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. There's a tendency of repeating, and believe you me, sometimes you need to listen to the president once in 10 years, because the speech is the same.
Yep.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for inviting me once again, and also to welcome my colleagues and my friend who says he was born at the time when the system was just starting.
I wasn't born.
You know, in every government, whether in the other countries, in Europe, in South America, the sectors are constant. The president, in his speech, first of all, I congratulate him for presenting a very good State of the Nation address in terms of his constitutional right as a president, as mentioned in 101 section 1. But don't expect the president to talk about the moon. Don't expect him to talk about other planets. He has to address sectors: economy, agriculture, tourism, infrastructure, exchange rates, banks. He talked about all these items. So when you say, listen to his speech for the last, if you've listened to him in the last 10 years, you don't have to listen this time around. Take an example. He said industries have grown by 6.2%, service industry 7.3%, ICT 7.9%. He talked about how commercial banks maybe bring in banks to control the exchange rates. He talked about the hospitals. He talked about agriculture, fertilizers, irrigation. For heaven's sake, this is a man elected by the people, the Republic in Uganda. Ugandans go to poll. They vote in big numbers. So if professor comes and says, or doctor, that you know the constitution was overthrown in 2005, there were elections. Ugandans went to the ballot and they voted. We should respect the mandate of the people. It is not him voting himself. It is Ugandans. So when we are here, let us say, fellow Ugandans who have been voting this man or this party, let us not say overthrowing this, because the President Museveni, I know, has done everything according to the law.
Okay, Bank of Uganda figures show that as of December 2017, the country's total debt portfolio stood at 37.9 trillion, higher than 32 trillion budget for the 2018-2019 financial year. Did the president offer any hope that we can borrow within our means? Honorable Moses Baliako.
You know, in economics, there's what we call macro and there's what we call micro. Those are two things that we have to note. Then also, in economy, we have the GDP. All these, we use them to measure the country, how it is performing. Every country borrows. Even America borrows. Even other countries, they borrow. But are we paying our debt? When you look at our budget which is going to come, you're going to see that a certain, Okotogon will agree with me here, we have more than, I think, 14 trillion. I'll check here, which is debt repayment.
It's the biggest package
Yes.
of this year's budget is debt repayment.
Do you
Debt
remember,
servicing, not actually paying.
do you remember how much
It's
money?
not even repayment.
Do you remember how much money Uganda was collecting in taxes in 1986? Do you remember how much we are collecting in 1999, 2000? And how much we are collecting today? And what have we borrowed for? We've borrowed for electricity. We've borrowed for agriculture. We have borrowed for infrastructure. We have not borrowed for luxury. We have borrowed to put into sectors that enhance economic growth.
Okay, Dr. Kisa, Dr. Kisa, if the head of state is delivering a State of the Nation address, does it require him to take us 3 decades back, 2 decades back, or is supposed to give us an account of the previous year and then give us a projection of where we're headed?
Absolutely, that is what it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, the State of the Nation address that we get from the president is a lecture in history and whatever, which has no bearing on what we are supposed to hear as citizens. So I'm very disappointed with my brother and my namesake Moses, Honorable Yeku, when he says the president delivered a very good state of the nation address. But you see, Patrick, the president can talk about economics, which is good and fine, okay? And he talks about the good things that have happened with our economy, and Honorable Yeku is saying, the debt is not a problem. Actually, the debt is a problem for a poor country. We cannot compare ourselves with rich countries. The United States can be as indebted as they want because they have the dollar. We don't have the dollar, okay? Their national currency is the international currency. Our national currency holds no meaning and value at all outside of the borders of Uganda. So the question is, we are so indebted, spending money on what? Honorable Yoko was saying, we have spent money on infrastructure and whatever, but we also spend a lot of money on unproductive activities and expenditures. State House, for one, is the biggest culprit of supplementary budgets, for example. And where does the money go? It goes towards oiling the patronage system that the president relies on to stay in power. It has nothing to do with productivity. It has nothing to do with investing in those sectors of the economy that can grow us, bring us more jobs, bring us more goods and services, and enhance our export capacity. It is money that goes towards handouts. It's money that goes towards a long motorcade, presidential motorcade, that has more than 50 vehicles to boot with a mobile toilet.
Okay.
Now, I also wanted to quickly point out, Patrick, before we move to Honorable Kotogong, that we can talk about all the rosy economics figures and state of affairs. But what about the politics? This is to answer your question about what did he leave out. What is the state of our politics? Because the state of the nation is not only about the state of the economy, it is also about the state of our politics. Where do we stand as a country in terms of the basics and fundamentals of our politics?
Honorable Okotogong, you are a member of parliament and you have already appropriated funds in the budget or allocated them to the different sectors, and very soon next week the Minister of Finance will be reading the budget. But is this budget going to go into the sectors of production so that it can make Ugandans get employment, get jobs, and then produce for export?
I think our budget right now is in a total state of quagmire. Because 30%, close to 30% is going to debt repayment, servicing our debts. 30%, that's over 10 trillion is going to servicing our debts.
In a budget of 32 trillion.
Then 8 trillion is going on infrastructure, which is not in the line of production. That is on roads and also electricity. And when you add defense, it goes to 22 trillion, which is going to unproductive sectors. It is not focusing on industrialization. It is not focusing on services. It is not focusing on promoting productivity of agriculture. So where you get that one, then you know that we are not going to create employment. We are not going to boost production. The supply will not be
But
there.
it is your job as members of parliament to appropriate,
you see, like
to make allocations.
I was here last time. I said it is the government to propose. And that's why we have been telling government that we need to realign and restructure our budgeting. Where priorities has to change. And we are saying, like in this budget, agriculture is going to be on about 900 billion. Out of the 33 trillion, only about 600, 900 will go to agriculture. And that is where we employ most of our people. 68% of our people are employed there. Close to 68 to 90%, 80% of our people are employed in agriculture. And yet, we are not investing more. Our comparative advantage is in agriculture. And yet, we are not investing more in agriculture. We are talking about industrialization. It is not going to come from outside. We need to industrialize by using our own raw materials, adding value to what we have in our country. We should not talk about building planes here, getting vehicles here. That is not where we have our comparative advantages. We don't have it there. So I want to appeal to the government. I'm their part of government, and even the president. You are talking about the state of the nation. It is accountability of the previous 1 year. What you promised, what you have achieved. What were the challenges within that period? You need to let people know and how you are going to solve those challenges.
Yeah.
And then you project the year ahead. This is what we are going to do. He did not talk about how many employment did we create during that time.
Okay, Mr. Andrew
How many
Karamagi.
do we
Mr.
hope
Andrew
to create?
Karamagi, the economy seems to
And that
be
is why.
in a downward sort of tile spin. The president was trying to give hope, including, referencing to the Harvard report that Uganda is going to be the fastest growing economy in a couple of years to come. Does that give us some kind of glimmer of hope?
You see, there's only one individual, one holder of an office, who's referred to in terms as glowing as Commander-in-Chief, Head of State, First Citizen, Fountain of Honor, Chief Executive, and President. When you hold such an office, we expect more than giving hope. In this case, false and unfounded hope. Presidents should give hope, yes, but it should be based on something. And I have to say, what we're having actually is something called a deflationary spiral. Economics contends or is organized in such a fashion that you should have, that wealth is a function of production.
Yeah.
Money that comes, when you go and pour 15 billion shillings into an area to win a by-election, that money that has not come out of real production creates distortions in the market. The order is that you have people getting employed. These people make savings. From those savings, they can invest, and out of the investments, you have more production. That's the cycle that economics presupposes, or that the model that we are running. What we have now is anything goes. In such a situation, you will have deflation, as we now see today. And I have a bone to pick with my elder brothers here, the two gentlemen who represent their respective constituencies in Parliament. Parliament has 4 cardinal roles: the legislative, the appropriations role, the representative, and the oversight role. I don't find it helpful, Patrick, for us to come to a national television and have an honorable member of Parliament tell us about how we should add value and grow our local industry here. That's for you and me to say, who are not in Parliament. You, Honorable Gong, and you, Moses Baleku, have it in your power to, in fact, do that. But when I look at the legislative agenda of Parliament over the last even 15 years, the obsession has been with passing laws and policies or engaging in activities. The first order of government business this session of Parliament was to amend the Constitution to entrench a life presidency. That cannot be the work of members of Parliament who then come to a national platform and tell us about how we should add value. It is in their power to do that. Secondly, there's a distinction, my brother, between growth and development in economics. You can have growth, yes. Even Somalia, which has been under warlords for decades,
And did not have a central government for a long time.
yes, has registered some form of growth. People grow. The question is, what is the substance of this development?
And how sustainable
If this kind of development is where you have a small coterie of individuals, it is not true. For instance, let me talk about the GDP issue. If we're 5 people on this bench, if they checked our wallets now and the total amount of money from our wallets is $1,000, it is not true that 1,000 divided by 5, that all of us therefore have $200. Honorable Gong could have 800.
Oh no, the 1,000 could be belonging to him.
and the rest of us don't have.
And that's how the GDP
Yes,
is
so
calculated.
GDP is a misleading figure. It's a lazy way of, we now talk about things like Human Development Index. What's the health, what's the dignity and welfare of citizens? And let me end with this before you come to Honorable Baleku. He mentioned the growth of sectors and so on. But look at any sector. Let's talk about airlines, the luxury industry, hotels and so on, telecoms, construction, finance and banking and insurance. Who dominates these sectors? It is not Ugandans. They are not represented.
Okay, you've made your point. Honorable Baleku, Isn't it better for the chief executive of the country to not really tell us about the figures, but say, this year we created so many jobs. This year we exported so much. Because that is understandable, that we have created 1 million jobs, that we have balanced our trade.
I think
because the figures, people don't feel them.
I think what you're telling Ugandans is that you want the head of state to summarize his State of National Address, and we now go trigger down to a classroom teacher and say, here I have come, ladies and gentlemen, in the industries, I have created 50,000 jobs.
Yeah.
Now,
but he should do that because
no,
this is
let me come to that.
One at a time.
Let me come to that. When he goes into that, we are going to sit in that room the whole day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's why you see he tries to summarize it, and the ministers and other people can go on radio, come on TV like we have come here, and add on to and explain more. Let me take a good example. The president said clearly that we thought when we liberalize the banking sector and we create more commercial banks, which are privately owned, there will be competition and we shall be able to control the exchange rate, which is normal in economics. We are all economists here. If that is there, that competition is there, the rate goes down. But these banks connive in terms of the exchange rate. You cannot go behind the door and fight that, even if you're in the central bank. So he says, what I have decided to do, I have brought the development bank back, and we are going to recapitalize it. And Okot will agree with me, we have allocated money to UDP. No, wait a minute.
Honestly, haven't you heard the story of recapitalizing Uganda Development Bank for many years back? Haven't you heard that story?
We have done that now. And we are saying this money is going to go to strictly manufacturers, processors, commercial agriculture, and we are going to lend this money at below 12%. Now, when the president says that, ladies and, no, there's no lady here, gentlemen, can't we really be thankful and say, finally, this thing is back? Manufacturers, processors, agriculturalists are going to borrow this money and ask, how much money have we put? Remember, we had allocated, I think we had allocated like it was 10 billion. And they said, 2 people can borrow that money. We said, add on to that money. And we have added. Sincerely, isn't that a very big step that we have done in terms of putting more money in the economy in the sectors that matter? He has gone ahead and said milk production in the country was less than 6,000 liters. Now Uganda is producing...
Was it last year or less when?
In this, yesterday.
Was it less than 6,000 liters when?
By the time he came into power. Yes.
So what State of the Nation address, my brother?
Let me complete this. But now we have 2.5 billion liters of milk in Uganda. And we are able to export that milk, and we are getting $13 million out of just that one component of milk.
How is the performance over the last 1 year?
And he said, I wish we had taken this also to other regions, and the milk would have gone higher. What we are looking for, like what he said, that if we removed the wallets and whatnot, we are looking of how to extend money into everybody's pocket. That's why we are saying in agriculture, we are boosting, manufacturing, boosting, processing, boosting. Let us sit here and be, first of all, real analytical.
Okay, in agriculture, which employs the biggest number?
62%.
You have put only 3 or 4% of the total budget.
No.
How much have you put?
It is here. I can show you.
Yes.
The lowest.
No.
It's the lowest.
No.
And it has always been.
No. Agriculture there.
No.
It can't go to 5.
No, 4.8.
Yes, it can go to 5.
4.8.
And 1 million trillion.
So you
billion.
But those are trillions.
No, but
to 72.
But
Yes.
that is way, by the way, that is way below
Yes.
The
the
Maputo
requirement under the Maputo Declaration.
Gentlemen, we're
Way below.
going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara, and my guests tonight are Honorable Moses Balyeku, Mr. Andrew Karamagi, Honorable Okot Felix Ogong, and Dr. Moses Kisa. You know, Moses, let me begin with you here, because we had 1 million children.
Which Moses?
Moses,
Kisa.
Dr. Kisa. Dr. Kisa, we add 1 million children to our population every year. But I wonder how many jobs we create every year. And for even our graduates. Yeah. If we are creating so few jobs and the population is increasing so much, are we not likely to have some kind of a demographic disaster or catastrophe in a very near future?
Absolutely, and you see that adds to the point that Andrew was making earlier about how GDP per capita is a misleading measure of the actual health of a country's economy. Because you see, you may have 6, 7, 8% GDP growth, but the other question that GDP growth is not answering is, what is the birth rate? What is the population growth rate in the country? Uganda has one of the highest population growth rates in the world. What that means is that a lot of the economic growth gains that we are making easily get offset by the high population growth rate that we have in the country. You have more people being, brought into the country through birth, and of course we are also a country that brings in a lot of foreigners as refugees and other people. So the growth that may be reflected in the official statistics actually is misleading, because the actual dynamics on the ground include so many other things going on that are not captured by the GDP statistic that is being given to us. So there is no doubt whatsoever that the high population growth rate that has been happening going on in this country presents a big problem, because it means we are expanding rapidly, socially, demographically, and in terms of our population, and yet that is not matched by the level of growth in terms of expanding productivity, expanding economic output, and providing the necessary opportunities that citizens need to be able to live a decent life. So let me put that question to Honorable Kotogong, because he's a member of parliament.
Yeah.
High population growth, unemployment is high. So how do we get out, circumvent this and get out of that kind of trap that
population growth right now does not worry me, because I studied population out to a very high level. We have not yet reached optimum level of population. We have not yet. So population growth should not actually worry us too much. What we should worry about, are we able to sustain this population? I go back to him, it is only about production. If all these people, many people are productive, they will be able to earn money, feed themselves, and grow the economy. If all these people are productive and they have income, they have disposable income, not only income, but disposable income, money that they can spend. Do we have a spending population? Do we have spending population? That is what we should look at. So therefore, we should go on.
But you know what the state of affairs is like.
That's what I'm telling you. So let us go to productivity. Let us focus in agriculture. Let us focus in service delivery. Service sector. Let us focus in the industries. This is where we are going to employ our people.
Felix,
no, it is okay. Yeah.
I think it is not only a question of having a population.
Yeah.
It is also a question of
the quality
of the population.
Yeah,
by
that's
the way,
what I'm talking about.
Africans, black people, we are still the minority in the world. Do you know that the black race is the
even the population density,
is the minority race in the world?
Yeah.
Yes.
Incidentally, that is one issue on which I agree with the General Museveni. You see, there are so many things I don't agree with.
Finally, I've got something.
I agree with him that there is need for more black people and more Africans and more Ugandans. The question is, what quality of citizens do we have? Do we have in place the provisions for a good education, provisions for a healthy population, provisions for a population that can be productive? Because you see, it is not enough to have bodies of people out there. Those bodies of people out there should be able to not just fend for themselves, but also add value to the economy. Sorry.
So that is what I was telling him. It is the quality of the population that we have. Are they able to spend? Do they have the income? Do they have the disposable income? Are they investing? Are they saving? once we answer all those things, population growth will not actually bother you.
So let me take this to Andrew Karamagi, because I have seen a policy of government trying to reskill university graduates. In fact, they have actually put about 300 billion to train graduates. So what does that say about preparing our young people through our education institutions, and when they get out, to find them they are not employable, and you have to put another 300 billion to retool them? So we have got everything wrong?
It's an indictment on the purported education system. And that's something that you can write a thesis about, or even require a different show altogether to discuss. Because
you know why I'm asking this?
Yes.
Because the two gentlemen are talking about the quality of the population. Yeah. But we even got those who have gone through university, and then they find that they are wanting.
Yes.
The government has still to invest in them.
Yes, and that's the point I'm making, that this is an indictment on what we call an education system. Whether you look at it from the perspective of curriculum or in terms of hands and heart. What product do you want to get out of this person when you take them through the Ugandan education system? And for me, what this points to is something, for lack of a word, that I will coin as policy nomadism. Policies, I argue tonight, must be stable, certain, predictable, and pursued over time. What we see today is policy nomadism. What do I mean? One day, it is we're going to train elementary learners at the elementary level in their local languages. After a few months, you hear a policy switch that now it's going to be automatic promotion for all children who are going. And I'm just talking about the limited aspect of education. Another time, you hear that the way forward now is vanilla growing and addition. Barely a year down the road, when people have invested in vanilla growing, then it changes to silkworm. Then another day you have entandikwa. Before that, today we are now having something called Operation Wealth Creation. This kind of unstable policy environment cannot allow for stability that leads to milestones in terms of the achievements that we seek as a population. Let me make mention of something about regarding purchasing power. You see, and this is still on the point of policy nomadism, the problem of Uganda is not electricity, or it's the lack of electricity. No. You can build 10 Karumas, 10 Isimbas, and 10 Bujagalis if your population cannot afford the cost of a kilowatt hour. That points to a problem of purchasing power or aggregate demand, a population that cannot spend. If you have let education become a commodity rather than an affordable amenity that helps Karamaji and Hisa and Ogong to become people in the future, regardless of where they come from or who they are. If education has become a commodity that you should go to through private training so as to access the best universities and so on, you can't have a population moving forward. We have, in fact, this is not a case of double standards. It's a case of no standards at all.
Honorable Moses Balieku, you represent Jinja West Municipality. And I'm sure you have young people there who are unemployed. And most of the time, perhaps they could be on your door at your home or even in your office trying to come to you to help them, maybe handouts and things like that. Doesn't that worry you as their leader?
One, like Dr. Moses said, that a big population is good. In economics, that is market. That's why you see we have gone ahead to encourage and also to bargain and struggle for integration.
Market for who?
You know, these 40 million Ugandans.
Yeah, but they're market for who?
But they consume.
They're market for China.
No, let's...
Market for Turkey.
Yes, true. But that is a population owned by Uganda, which China may be tapping into. Now the onus is upon us to see how do we make our population productive. Uganda's population is now 40 million, almost 42 million Ugandans. Out of those, 60% are below 35 years. And that is a very active group or generation that we have. And if that group is unemployed, that's why you see we are, like I was saying, that we have gone into what we call market integration. Open boundaries for us, have one-stop centers in trade, in COMESA, East African Community, to make sure that we broaden
My brother,
our gap.
please.
Let me make my point.
Sure.
Let me make my point. And when that whole population is there, and he says that electricity is not important, that is not a very good comment.
That's not what I said.
That's an indicator. Electricity is an indicator of growth, an indicator of development. When an investor is coming to a country, he's going to ask you, the first question an investor will ask you, a manufacturer, is, do you have enough electricity? Do you have, how many flights do you have to your country? 3, what is your population? 4, which banks, international banks are in your country? 5, do you have elections there? Meaning, is the country politically stable? And that population in danger, the first thing is stability. And once there is stability in any economy, those youths we have encouraged, like he has said, we have operational wealth creation, we have circles, we have money in the Ministry of Gender for youths, we have those who are starting these automobiles, carpentry, whom we are funding, and we are saying, form these groups, come up with your concepts, especially those who have graduated and are not yet employed. We also have at the same time cater for other sectors. Because if these are unemployed, then there will be no medicine in the hospitals, then there will be no other primary schools, then there will be no roads, then there will be electricity. Government is like a human body. Every part has to function at the same time. Now, those youths in Jinja, to me, we have put those sectors and saying those who want to do metal workshops, carpentry, the women want to do into tailoring and whatnot, our onus is to get them market for what they produce. But let's first make them produce. And in Jinja, I am doing that. If a caller from Jinja calls, he will testify that I am fighting unemployment in Jinja by ensuring that all these sectors
There's
have
a
this
technical
kind of
school in the neighboring district, I think, of Namutumba. Is it Namutamba? Namutumba. And there's a technical school there. Up to now, that technical school maybe is maybe having a quarter of the students to go there because it's supposed to give them skills. Where are those, the people who can have skills? I mean, where are they getting the skills from?
You know, universities are now many. We were here discussing. The people who are graduating are more than 100,000 every year in different skills. You're saying there is no employment, which is true. I agree. But look at that institute you're talking about. It has an absorption of those who are going to train those ones. That's another sector you can say we need to. That's why you see we're saying science courses.
But you are aware that the Ugandan children have not gone into those institutes.
We have a tendency in Uganda. I'm sorry, I'm a Ugandan. You're also Ugandans. When I say this, people think that those are low income generating jobs. And they tend rather to want to come to Kampala. You'll find somebody in Kampala, unemployed, but has more than 5 acres of land in his district. And he's in Kampala, and he's saying there are no jobs. Let's take a plane. One day, all of us here, we move around Uganda and see which land is empty.
You
where there
see,
is no plantation.
Okay, yeah,
You'll find them.
Andrew.
yes, sure.
Yes.
Honorable Balyaku,
Yes.
as leaders, we can't, or you cannot sit here and blame the population or lament. The reason why we have empty, unused land is a direct reason. Government policy is not just what you do or say. It is also what you don't do and what you don't say. The property market in Uganda.
Just take
Let me make the point.
Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute there.
Sure.
Yesterday in the President's State of National Address, he talked about land fragmentation. He even gave an example. He said in German. He said in German. These were his words. He said in German, land is actually left to one individual, and the rest are compensated. They go in other areas. Now, for us, what you're telling us to do.
You're confirming my point.
Yes, but I'm just telling you
Yes.
that.
And I'm saying, you're affirming my point. What point am I making? I'm saying the property, the distortions in the property market, or the underutilization of resources, or what we see happening in education, when you have people who own private schools being ministers in charge of public education, that obvious and glaring conflict of interest. When you have that situation, you cannot blame the type of graduates that you get out of that system. It is a result of government policy, consciously or subconsciously. The same applies to land. What have we seen about, what has the Justice Bamgemere Commission taught us? It has showed us that the biggest offenders, insofar as land is concerned, are actually those who are in charge of public affairs in this country. So, look, the population, leaders shape the culture, not the other way around. So we are where we are precisely because of what leaders have been doing and not doing. I'd like to make a point about the issue of integration. What are we, and this might be grammatically wrong, but I'll say it, what are we integrating? Or better put, what are we taking into this integration?
Are we opening up?
And the point I want to make is we sent troops to South Sudan. We've done it several times. When the Comprehensive Peace Agreement was signed, the Kenyans, our neighbors, moved in with banks, insurance, among other heavy, kinds of investments. Ugandans, our brothers and sisters, are vending grasshoppers, are riding border borders, are being killed. They are living lives in indignity. So the question that we're putting to you here is, what are we taking into this integration? What skill? What amount of other countries have investment banks that lend to their private sector? We here have been left to the hands of
but I think I need to correct that one.
Banks.
Honorable Kotoko.
Because now we need to deal with figures.
Yes.
You remember when we liberated together with the South Sudan,
Yes.
our export to Southern Sudan was enormous. When you go to Congo,
You said you'd give figures.
No, I'm giving figures. It
Yes.
was close to $500 million, close to $1 billion. Look at our export to Kenya alone. The other day I was comparing import from Kenya and export from Kenya. Actually, we are not doing badly in that sector, especially in the field of agriculture. When you go to Congo, when you go to Burundi, when you go to Rwanda, we are exporting.
Honorable Felix Okotogo, when you
Your
get
constituents
Kenyan
are
lorries,
crying over
when
rice.
you get Kenyan lorries,
The rice problem.
Kenyan trucks, go to Movende, go to Lira, and go to Kamwenge, and park at the people's gardens and put their maize and take it as grain to Nairobi, and you say we are exporting, then that's not.
But you
When you
see,
have Kenyan trucks,
I don't
come
understand.
take charcoal
If
and take our
somebody
timber
comes to buy,
and take our timber
my
and
product,
Gentlemen, we are talking
from my
he mentioned-
from the gate, from my gate, farm gate.
Honorable
You know what
I think I'm
comparative?
proud about
Honorable
it.
You know comparative advantage?
Andrew mentioned,
What is it about?
Andrew mentioned that
advantage?
Kenyans have gone there to put banks. For us, we have gone to sell grasshoppers.
No, we are selling our
That
products.
is a very wrong statement, and you should withdraw that. Ugandans don't sell grasshoppers in Sudan. For us, Ugandans, when
We are
that
exporting.
economy,
What
no, just a
tangible
second.
investment have
That
we put
economy,
in South Sudan?
that
What
economy,
investment have we made in South Sudan?
we are the ones who have been producing what South Sudan consumes. Sending food is much more business than having a bank there.
But you see.
And when, before that, doctor, when the South Sudan economy got problems, who suffered most? Was it Kenya or Uganda? It was
It was
Uganda.
Uganda.
To the extent that we had to call,
yeah.
the president had to invite Salva Kiir here to sign a document that Uganda government saves Ugandan traders. It came to parliament, we approved
But
it.
okay, if you can hold
Because-
there, Honorable Walieku,
Yes.
isn't it prudent that a Ugandan government should be helping the farmers to add value to their products so that the Sudanese lorries and trucks should not be
Which trucks are you talking about?
people who buy maize, for
Ugandan
example,
traders.
But
to take it as grain to Nairobi?
No, now you've skipped his point. You've gone to another.
No,
Let's
because I am
conclude
sure-
South Sudan. Before we go to Kenya. Let's conclude South Sudan.
But even we take also grain to South Sudan.
Also,
Moses,
yes.
We could have added value to
you
that
see,
maize.
You see the fact that South Sudan, which is a country poorer than Uganda, turns out to be our leading export market, should tell you just about our export capability. The fact that we export to a country that is poorer than us.
You are like an opportunistic infection.
And it's
No.
the leading destination.
Should tell you something. You see, so what do we export there? Okay.
Now let me tell
It
you.
mean- it
You must
means-
know.
it means-
Let
it
me
means actually-
Should we leave a
Doctor,
market that is
Doctor,
next
let
door
me-
and
let-
go for a market that is very
no,
big?
but you-
no,
but
let's-
that is-
strategy.
so what is our competitiveness?
Is that a strategy?
What
There's
is our
something
competitiveness?
called
So
comparative-
And what do we export to South
It's like
Sudan?
we are
Yeah,
scavenging.
I wanted to give you.
You see, we export to South Sudan either primary goods, okay,
Yes.
like grain,
Matoke.
No.
or stuff like cement, which is produced here but with a lot of
But
imported
doctor,
raw
at your
material.
level,
Okay?
at your level as a doctor,
Yes.
when you export to America or Europe, what do you get?
No, let
Well,
me.
you see,
what do you get?
It means
No,
you
before
are-
before what it means,
you
you,
see, but-
get foreign exchange.
Yes, but you
when
see-
you export Sudan, you get what?
Well,
no,
well,
no,
well,
no, no,
well.
no, no, Honorable
No.
Balieku, no.
No.
That's
When
an
we are headed-
oversimplification of this
no.
discussion.
Okay,
No.
one at a time.
No, I think they have talked.
Honorable Kotogo.
I want to inform them that we are not exporting those unfinished goods.
What do we export?
We
from
export
Sudan?
a lot of sugar.
Processed
Produced
sugar.
in Uganda here,
Yes.
100%. We export cement, 100%. You are talking about the content of our cement.
Incidentally,
Actually,
Felix,
cement, 90% is from here.
Felix,
we only get the clinker.
Do you know
Maybe
that,
import that
do you
one,
know
but
that, do you know that,
98%
that part of that
is-
sugar you export South Sudan
You
is
see,
actually
that-
imported
that's
sugar?
another
No,
argument.
no,
that is another
no.
argument.
No.
Find out.
Doctor,
Find
No,
out.
no,
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 no, find out.
I am from Ginger. I'm from
That is
Soka,
an assumption.
where
It
most
is
sugar
not based
factories
on
are
fact.
from.
You see, if sugar
No,
can
no,
be
no.
very expensive
It is
here,
not based on fact.
In the
So
commercial market,
no, you
you
can't
don't
dismiss
import
it.
sugar.
Hey,
No,
unless you have got- unless you have got-
you are talking
unless
about
you
what
have-
is on paper.
No,
You are talking about what
Let
is
me-
on
let me
paper.
inform you.
We have
In Uganda-
we
no,
have
let me-
a black market.
No, let me inform
of
you.
fraudulent
In Uganda, we
practices
used to
here.
produce 230 tons of sugar. Now we are producing close to 500 tons. And we can only consume 400 tons.
So why do the prices keep going up?
How does that help your argument? Actually, it helps his argument.
That what?
Because it shows that the prices...
We are exporting now.
No,
This one.
This is a distortion in the market. That's what it means.
What do you mean?
Can we complete the list
This
of what
this
we
matter we are
export?
discussing, the contraband market for sugar in Uganda, was a subject actually of media discussions, and I'm sure you, as honourable members of parliament, are aware that there was a prominent minister highlighted in this fight of sugar, just like the current cases with rice,
Yeah.
rice prices and
No,
so
I think
on,
we need to
and
get
market.
facts about that.
No. This is a public discussion that has
No,
been
but
going on.
Felix, you know,
Okay, one
you
at a
know,
time,
you
one
know,
at- one
you-
at a time.
No, Felix,
I was
no, Felix,
giving you
Felix,
what
know
we
that.
are
No, but
exporting.
you know, but
I
you
am.
know.
I
Okay.
told you we export sugar,
But
cement,
Soft drinks,
soft drinks,
alcohol, beer,
iron sheets,
iron sheets.
how much
beer.
value addition? How much value
We
addition
so
takes
many
place?
things that we export.
But Felix, you know,
Even meat,
No,
we
but
export
you, but
meat
you
there.
Know, but you know that
Our cows,
no,
our
no,
goats,
hang-
our sheep.
Hang on a second. You
we
know that
exporting.
recently, when the sugar prices in Uganda were shooting through the roof, sugar actors in the economy here were granted tax exemptions to import sugar.
When
But
was-
that was one-off time. That
But-
was
but
actually
you see,
2011.
no,
I was
but-
part of them,
no,
by
but-
the way.
No, but you're
It was
talking like you don't
2011.
know- you either you don't
No,
know,
I know it. It
either
was
you- either you don't
2011
know,
that we could not meet
either
our
you don't
quota.
know or you are not being honest.
No, I'm telling you
know,
the
you
truth.
know that
Moses.
there are dubious
Moses.
business actors
Cartels.
who are connected to the state
Moses,
in
I want
this
to- Moses,
country,
I want to
and
agree
they are
with
going to
you.
be importing sugar,
Moses.
okay, and then export it to South Sudan.
Doctor.
Okay, gentlemen, we are going
Sure.
to take a break.
And
when
if
we
you have
come,
facts,
and when we
I'll
come
get
back,
from you.
we'll be looking into the fight against graft, because the president made some pronouncements yesterday, and he's not happy with the Inspectorate of Government, how it's doing its job. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Honorable Moses Balieku, Mr. Andrew Karamagi, Honorable Felix Okoto Gong, and Dr. Moses Kisa. I want now we shift gears and look into the fight against graft, because the president yesterday addressed the question of graft by accusing the IGG of doing barely enough. He appointed a parallel organization. Dr. Kisa, how-
Patrick,
yes.
you see, before we went to the break, I was joking that actually General Museveni is the biggest beneficiary of graft. You know why?
That's an explosive kind of
It-
statement
it-
you're
it-
making.
it-
How
it-
do you
is-
substantiate that?
It is. You see, I substantiate it by saying this, that the NRM system of rule and the president is staying in power is actually held together by corruption. In fact, corruption is how the NRM and Museveni succeeds, not how they fail. The system in place is one of dispensing spoils and giving access to patronage resources, which is actually corruption. So when the president talks about fighting corruption, I don't know what he's talking about, because if there was no corruption, he would not be in power. His being in power is predicated on his ability to issue access opportunities, either directly or indirectly, which is really corruption. So I don't know whether the president is the right person to be whining and, you know, lamenting about corruption, because he is the biggest beneficiary of corruption. You see, look at all the things that go on around him, okay? You know, many of his people who have been found to have been involved in, you know, activities ABC, including his lands minister right now, okay? The lands minister, in a system where accountability is enforced from the top, the lands minister should have stepped down by now, okay? She hasn't. Why? Because she's part of the system, and the system is a system of not doing right, but doing wrong. And doing wrong pays. It doesn't penalize you. So the president, I'm afraid, is not going to be able to fight corruption. You see, he can complain about the IGG, but what can the IGG do when the man at the top, the person who is supposed to whip and bring everybody in order, cannot do it? Okay?
Honorable Felix Okotogong, will it take really institutions to fight corruption? Because it looks like it has permeated down up to the grassroots, to the villages. What can the IGG, the Inspector of Government, do really in the fight against, you know, because there's a lack of values.
You see, what the president said yesterday, I did not understand. First of all, in Uganda, we have created an institution to control corruption. We have the Auditor General that does accountability, auditing and everything, gives a report to Parliament. We have the institution of the IGG, Inspectorate of Government.
We have PAC.
We have PAC. We have CID. We have all those institutions are there. They might have their challenges. But for the president to come up that I'm going to create an ad hoc committee,
Do what?
not based on law, in his office, to do what in the first place? Because it's not premised on law. I think that is completely wrong, and I think we cannot
even if it was
accept.
premised on law.
Secondly,
what is it that it's going to do that the institution
has not
done?
Secondly, the president appoints. The president appoints the IGG. If the IG is not performing like the level he wants, he has the power to dismiss the IGG.
Honorable Moses Balioko, do you agree with these two gentlemen on this?
I don't fully agree with him. But, you know, the president has always brought solutions and people laugh at them. At the end of the day, again they praise them.
AG?
Bamugemerere's commission. People are saying, why extend it? Why is it taking too much money? Today everybody is saying, let them go to Bamugemerere. Bamugemerere is doing very well. When he extends Bamugemerere's extension, people even clap and say, thank you, Mr. President. But he was very clear in his words. He said, actually, allow me to quote him what he said. He said, I am quoting a unit of 3 people. He didn't even give terms of reference for this unit. You remember in the presidential, there's a unit that looks for people who have stolen drugs. It has been doing well. There is a unit on land which resulted into Bamugemerere's commission. It has done well. When he comes and says, I am quoting a unit of 3 people, and then he says, that was the purpose of the office of IGG. Then, actually, can I read for you what he said? The president said, what happened to the IGG? Why don't the victims of corruption report those incidents to the office of the IGG? That was the purpose of the office, to protect the public from corrupt officials, to protect the investors against corrupt officials. The IGG should reflect on this. Should reflect on this. Are her staff credible? Put a question mark. Why does the public not trust the institution? We need answers. Today, we should be invited to come and discuss this issue. Such that, because he's also asking himself, what's happening? Let me put this unit of these 3 people. They will give their telephone numbers. When these people call, they are
So
called.
the president is lamenting and
They're
agonizing
disappointed.
like any of us.
Yeah.
He's giving you the state of the nation address, and he's telling you how the IGG institution is performing. He told you, he said, I have put these people, a small unit, let them be telephoned. They will come.
So that they
Then
do
the
what?
rest of the law will take action
And they
from
do
there.
what?
They do what?
Let us watch.
That's
What's
a
their
unit to
mandate?
victimize
Now,
other people.
Ask
Yeah.
when you
That's
ask what's
unit
their
to manage
mandate.
people must be very
For
careful
him,
with it.
the corruption is eating us left, right. Everybody knows that. We all agree that there's too much corruption in the country. Even me, I agree that it is there.
Yeah.
But
When you say even you agree, you should be the last person to agree or what?
no, I am part of the institution of government. Even me, I agree. So when they put another measure in place, it's like when you go to a doctor and you have multiple infections. Yeah, he can give you a strong drug. So when he puts this small unit, it is going to help us. People are going to call these people and say, Okoto Gong is corrupt. Balieko is corrupt. Andrew is corrupt.
But-
And they'll give information.
But Moses,
This will help the people to have another
That is
option.
victimizing
you see,
people
you
now.
see,
Yes.
you see, creating new institutions or creating
That's
new
a small unit.
organizations.
It's small unit.
It's proliferation which creates more avenues of actually corrupt practices.
Yeah.
It doesn't solve the problem. If you want to have a serious system that deals with graft, it is important that you in fact consolidate organizations and institutions and have a few robust.
When the Bako
Okay,
started,
and
you
let me
remember Bako,
also-
IGG
but
Bako,
also,
when
Mr.
they started
Kamara,
picking people,
this
the big
issue-
people,
Yeah,
he was removed.
Here, Andrew Karamagi's
Before you go to
Andrew Karamagi's submission.
that institution
on this
is
one.
going to wake up with this unit being established. It is going to wake up.
No, what happened to
But-
Bako? Bako started picking on big people. Those other people. Was indeed removed.
Okay, Andrew, what's your take on this?
Yes.
The fight
Um,
against graft.
Yes, every organism has something called, a living organism has something called DNA. the DNA strands, the helix, there are two strands on one end and one end.
Where are you taking
Chromosomes,
this now?
yes.
Okay.
This is now science.
This DNA,
the NRM DNA.
yes, determines the character,
So what is the
the
NRM
traits,
DNA?
Let's wait.
Not NRM.
character, traits, the growth trend, and features,
The genetic
among others, the
composition.
genetic composition of a given organism or creature. At the heart of the DNA strands of this Museveni-led junta or administration is corruption. It's the strongest strain of corruption.
Such that if it wasn't there, it would collapse.
Yes, and what we are told in Latin, there's a maxim to the effect that, which says, and I'll translate, nemo dat quod non habet. You cannot give what you do not have. For a man who has ordered judges to find his former vice president not guilty of corruption after the Commonwealth Conference, for a man who has tolerated people who have been implicated in land grabbing and others to sit in the same cabinet with him to this day, a man who delayed to fire an inspector general of police who was caught pants down hobnobbing with common city criminals, for a man who paid legal fees for a minister who was implicated in the theft of the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization Fund, the Gavi Fund, the list, he cannot in any way attempt to distort or genetically engineer, since we are now talking genetics, this organism whose root, whose base structure is corruption. It is not possible. The day he attempts to take action against this genuine solid action is the day this junta will collapse.
Andrew, when you use that kind of analogy, and yet you have two members of parliament here, you seem to suggest that they are part of the strands. Because they are in government. With no respect.
That is part of the DNA.
Are you part of the DNA?
Not at all, not at all.
Of the
I've heard of
genetic
a-
composition.
His anatomy.
You see now, he's talking about the movement government.
Yeah,
but
you are
even those who are
you
corrupt
you're a member of
are
parliament.
not actually movement people. Some of them are FDC, some of them are UPC. So this is not actually not about a party.
Can I conclude my point?
Okay,
And let me
Andrew,
conclude my
even
point.
okay.
civil
Let him-
servants who
and
still
by the way,
do
Felix,
not even
let
have.
him conclude his point.
Let me conclude my
Andrew
But
Karamagi.
as he's concluding his point,
Okay.
this is not a junta. This is a democratic government.
Yeah.
Yes, you should not call this. This should not be allowed because that is a very big insult to us who are in. Like,
It's like a military
It's
junta.
like
You see, Moses,
I didn't come by the gun.
you
I
might
came
be-
by the ballot
You might be right,
Yes.
but Andrew is more accurate.
because he was born in '86.
No, he doesn't
2 years
know.
after.
Giving a more accurate.
Okay,
He was born in
this is
the
my conclusion is that this is the overarching system that we are living under. It cannot fight itself. It cannot self-correct because that's what it is born of. The units, this creation of units, this is not the first such unit. The delivery and monitoring of health services unit, the so-called land task force, and the several other desks
State House.
which mirror the formal government to which we pay taxes. Now, what you have is an informal state and the formal state, and a situation where the informal state has more power and resources than the formal state. In such a situation, I have sincere sympathies for Justice Irene Mulyagonja, who finds herself in the same situation that Ms. Jennifer Musisi found herself when she was blamed for the electoral defeat of the junta in Kampala. and my last statement on this is going to be that why is it that even after all these changes, IGG after IGG, Justice Jotham Tumwesije, Honorable Raphael Baku, and now the current Justice Irene Mulyagonja,
There
and
was
others,
Faith Monda.
why is it that in this equation, there's only one constant character or value in the names of General Yoweri Museveni? It is time we removed this value and input a new value in this equation, and maybe we may not
You
decide.
and who?
As long as he's as citizens,
You and who?
as
Him
Ugandans.
and-
No, you
fellow
appeal, you
Ugandans.
appeal to
As long as
the
we
voters.
still have the person who benefits lock, bolt, and stock from lock, barrel, and stock from this corruption, we cannot
But
resolve.
also, one thing
resolve it.
about what he mentioned a list of many people, vice president, ministers, Gavi Fund, whatnot. All those names he mentioned have all left active government. He has removed them from
The
his
one who
government.
took a
And
bribe
where did
at
they
the
go?
UN is still in office.
Where
He's
did
the
they
foreign
go?
minister.
No. By
You
the
know,
way,
you know what? I'm
the-
going to open the line so
Where
that
did-
those
the
who are
issue-
watching this
the issue of,
broadcast are able to
Moses.
tell us what they think
The
Where-
issue of-
about
where did they
the
go
issues
after
we've been
this?
discussing here, because we can be making sense here, but making sense to ourselves, and yet to have all the whole country
But as the
also
line- as the line
also
opened,
watching.
the
So,
issue of the Minister of Foreign Affairs
let-
is very false.
Let me involve Ugandans right
Very,
now.
very false.
Is that-
And
Arrest warrant.
I'm going to take
No,
the
it's
very
not
first
there.
call online.
Produce it.
Okay, gentlemen.
You have-
I have a call online. Hello. Hello.
Yes, please.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Thomas Wilson calling from Kamwenge.
Tumwesige, you're on air. You're loud and clear.
Yeah, I've seen Baku, that MP of Jinja.
Barieko.
Balieku. Honorable Balieku.
I'm listening.
Hey, what happened to my Tumwesige in Kamwenge? Oh, no.
Yes, go on.
We seem to have lost Tumwesige online from Kamwenge. Let me take another call online. Hello. Hello.
Happened to my Kamwenge.
Tumwesige, I think you were having a... You left your TV set volume high, so it is creating an echo.
Hello, sir.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and who is this I have online?
This is Daniel Wadimba from Entebbe.
Entebbe, you're on air, sir.
Yes, I appreciate your debate,
Thank you.
but I'm sure what we need to do is to come out clearly, all of us as Ugandans, and be bold to address corruption in this country. I think we don't need to leave it to the ruling party. We need to fight right from our homes, right from our families, because
Agreed.
corruption begins from home. I think all these thieves we have today, that is the way they were raised. They never learned it from NRM. They never learned it from FDC. They learned it from home. They learned it. They went with it to school. They went with it into these offices they are running right now. And I think what the government should do, they need to be stronger on all these corrupt officials. Once somebody is convicted, they need to pay and go home. There is no need to put somebody into prison who has stolen billions. We don't benefit from that as Ugandans.
Okay, sir, you made your point, sir, and your point is taken. We have lost it at the family level. We have lost it at the community level. We have lost it at the educational level. And so we cannot have...
The whole DNA.
Yes. So every system needs to be cleaned, and it appears the bench here agrees with you. Let me pick another caller. Hello? Hello? I have a call online. Hello? Okay. Yes.
Hello,
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm called Fred Garura from Uganda.
Fred Ruegarwa from Uganda.
Yes, please.
You're on air, Fred.
Yeah, thank you very much for the discussion.
You're welcome.
But I appreciate that gentleman who talked about the DNA.
Andrew Karamagi.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And that can be.
Your line from Uganda today is not very clear, Fred.
Okay.
Okay. Could you try
So
again?
the point is that the DNA theory is very correct.
The DNA knowledge is very correct.
Very, very correct.
Okay, thank you very much. You just called me to appreciate and agree with Mr. Andrew Karamagi. Let me take two more callers, and then my panelists will each give a concluding remark. I have another call online. Hello? Hello? Okay, sometimes we get technological issues, and it appears many people want to call in at the same time, and then... Hello?
Hello?
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, I'm Onyango Derek.
Where are you calling from, sir?
Yeah, from Hoima.
Hoima, Onyango Derek, you're on air.
Now, what happened, when we look at corruption,
yes,
it is a basis which starts... Corruption is a basis which starts right from school. Look at our education system. A child goes to school, the money which he uses, he goes to one. The land is sold, the education system is very high. When this boy graduates, he finds that there's a lot of debt which is there. He gets a job, he wants to say to his parents, the money which was borrowed, sources. So what does he do when he's in the office? He starts now looking for the way of settling the parents. He starts the way of looking at the aunt. And that's how corruption starts.
Okay, thank you very much, our caller from Hoima there. And I'm not going to take any more callers, but at least we appreciate that you made an effort, and only that it's a question of time. I can't pick all your calls. So our time is almost out. Beginning with you, Dr. Kisa, what's going to be your concluding remark?
Quickly, I think the callers seem to emphasize that the problem of corruption is social. I think they have a point, but they're also missing another point, which is that all of us human beings, left to our devices, are capable of doing so many wrong things. Not just being corrupt. We could also commit murder. We could also steal directly without necessarily, corruption, which is you use your official position or whatever office you have for personal enrichment. We are all capable of doing wrong things. The reason why there is law in place, there is a government, and there is a state, is to be able to make sure that we as individual human beings don't do things as we wish. Okay? So it is true that socially our country has decayed. But it is also true that politically we have decayed. Such that, you see, corruption is not just a social problem, it's also a political problem. And it's a political problem at different levels, including what I have emphasized from the beginning, which is that it is a politically functional. It is a tool for the regime to be able to do whatever things it wants to do to be in power.
Thank you very much. Honorable Felix Okotogong, your parting shot.
Fellow countrymen, our country, Uganda, has very high potential of growth, actually accelerated growth. if right policies and priorities are put in place. If we can deal away with corruption, because a lot of money goes away out of corruption, about 50% according to the records that we have, a lot of money is stolen and does not go where it should go. And therefore, we need to all of us fight corruption. We need to put right policies in place. We need to create employment for our people. We need to put money in the pockets of all our parents. All Ugandans must have money in their pockets and are able to spend. Because right now, about 90%, close to 80% of our population are not spending enough. And therefore, we cannot create accelerated growth.
Andrew, you're parting short, very briefly.
Yes, very briefly. I will refer to French philosopher Frédéric Bastiat, who contended, and I agree with him, that when plunder, this is with regard to corruption, when plunder becomes a way of life for a group of men in a society, over the course of time, they create for themselves a legal system that authorizes it and glorifies it. The other, as I also conclude, I'd like to say that leaders...
So plunder is the way of life here? No?
It is self-evident. Yeah. Leaders shape the culture. Leaders shape the culture. We can talk, ourselves hoarse about what is going on and what isn't going on. But at the end of the day, societies rise and fall on the shoulders of... This has been affirmed by theorists. It has been affirmed by practical life. I would invite all of us here to take time and read a book by Daron Acemoglu and James Robinson, Why Nations Fail. It makes that argument. The last thing I want to say is to invite my fellow young Ugandans, and I began from that point at the start. Many of us have not known a different arrangement, and how we transition from this to another dispensation, the dispensation that we aspire for, and join a community of states that are proud to be, who they are and where they come from, and contribute to the global economy and so on, is that politics is a contact sport. You don't sit in the stands and, watch, spectate. We have to participate in this process. This is not for just members of parliament, for lawyers, for professors, for media practitioners. No, it is a collective effort that we must all participate in. So run for office, write an article, sing a song, participate in, in processes, and get involved in the affairs of your society so that we can improve our fate. Otherwise, if things continue the way they are, I do not want to imagine what would happen with our society as we currently see. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. To me, I want first of all to thank our callers and viewers. It is very important that all of us in Uganda become more patriotic, more nationalistic about affairs in this country. It is not just about government. The most cardinal role for every Ugandan is to put a foot in the private sector. All the economies that have grown, all the countries that have developed, the private sector is bigger than the government sector, which is the public sector. If each of us has an aim, work for a short period in government, join the private sector. Let's not look more at being employed, let's look more at creating employment. And once we decide that we are now patriotic, we are looking at the private sector, I want to join the private sector. That should be the role, cardinal principle of most Ugandans who are now in active service. That I need to join the private sector, create employment, create more revenue, create more tax base, the country will develop and run at a very high level.
Honorable Moses Balieku from Ginger West, thank you very much. Andrew Karamagi from Action Aid, Honorable Felix Okoto Gong from Dokolo, and Dr. Moses Kisa from Northwestern State University in the US. Thank you very much. And all of you have been a part of this. Good night and God bless Uganda.